Who's reading? So I missed some of this.
I'll
So
do it. Hi,
okay.
Kathy here. I'll do it.
Kathy is going to do the wine.
Whichever one you want me to do.
Okay, do the wine.
Okie dokie.
So
And just
who's reading, Frank?
So I have Rich, Jim, Emmy, Kathy. And I need someone to do the challah and
Right.
someone to do the concluding thoughts.
I can do the challah from my own screen. That's not a problem.
Okay, so just the concluding thoughts.
Please, somebody volunteer, please. Anna will do Anna will do it.
Anna.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Anna. Very good. Good selection of
Excellent.
readers. Yes.
I'm going to do the challah. Okay, I'm just writing that down for me. And you just make sure you call on the people and everybody will know and it'll be excellent. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Okay. Am I a co-host? Yeah, I think I am. Okay, good. Okay, great. All right, another 3 minutes and then we'll begin.
You know, I completely forgot that I had to do the live streaming today, and I'm really glad that I took an Uber home instead of the bus because I would not have gotten here on time.
I'm glad you got home in time, Kathy, because I didn't know and Shauna didn't tell me either. So we had a whole
It's on me. I have the memory of a dead rat, so this is just what happens.
my senior moments, they happen to me. So I hear you. Don't worry. And no, you don't have the memory of a dead rat. Don't worry about it. Okay.
I do.
Another couple of minutes and we'll be good. So wait for a few more people to come. And we'll all be good. We'll all be good.
How's everyone's week going?
So far, so good.
Carol, you're muted.
How can it be good?
Well, yeah, so far so good. As good as it can be, which isn't good. That's what I meant. It's not good. It's not good. No, every morning it's what fresh hell is this, but whatever.
Yeah. Nightmare.
Yeah.
Carol, have you been getting a lot of new clients?
No, that isn't what, not yet. And it's in all these years, I've never been afraid to go into the courthouse, but I am afraid now.
Yeah, I hear you.
And because I don't know what's going to happen
Yeah.
when I get there.
Well,
You know.
they could potentially arrest you for defending them.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's really, really awful. So, but I have seen people lined up, people of color lined up at post office to get their passports so that they carry their proof of citizenship around with them
They'll get around to taking that away too.
in case.
Yeah,
You know,
but they'll get around to taking that.
prepared.
I'm just afraid they're gonna
Getting those
unnaturalize
cards.
people.
Everybody should be getting those cards instead of the regular passport. They
They're
pay
saying
extra for those
they're
cards.
saying the cards will not be good.
Oh, yeah?
Nope.
That is not good. So
They're
I don't
also
know what's
saying
gonna
that
be
if
done.
you don't have a passport that matches your legal documents, as in if you changed your name when you got married, that you will not be able to, and I changed my name when I got married, my passport matches my married name. So I have to carry around my marriage certificate too. You won't be allowed to vote
It's just
if you're
getting,
if you're female.
I think we're all gonna, well, I think we're gonna end up, it's gonna be the Vietnam era and the civil rights era.
I fully expect to die in a concentration camp, frankly.
Yeah. They're building them already anyway.
I know they are.
Let's not go there, okay?
No.
Let's just not go there.
Well,
Why
why,
not? We
It's
have
reality.
to be prepared. We can't make believe it's not happening.
Being prepared is one
No,
thing. Saying
Jim.
we're automatically going to, no, we
Jim?
need to stay positive at this point.
Jim,
No, we're
Carol
not
does this.
positive and we will not be positive. Not
Stop,
with
all
this
right, let's not
going
have
on.
an argument. Wait a minute, guys, let's not have an
Okay.
argument. I'm
Time
with
to
Carol
start.
on this one, Jim, that's all I'm gonna say, okay?
Okay, so I'm gonna mute everyone now.
Yeah, thank you, we're gonna start
press
now. I'm
start.
gonna bring up the screen in a second. All right, 1 second, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go there.
I know, but it's,
It's okay, let's not right now. Can everybody see the screen?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna bring us to the, 1 second, I have to do it on the other side. Okay. Page 40. Okay. All right, Frank, you can start whenever you're ready.
Okay, can you hear me and see me?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, so Shabbat Shalom, everyone. And Shabbat is one of the greatest gifts that the Jewish people have given to our world. And part of that gift is to take a couple of breaths and just breathe and bring the peace. We say Shabbat Shalom. Shalom means peace. Let's bring a little bit of that peace to each other while we're sharing this wonderful time together. So we'll start off with our song, Rebecca. We're going to be doing Bim Bam, and that is song number 3 on page 41.
Thank you. Yes, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam. Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat 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 Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat 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 Shalom. Shabbat Shabbat, Shabbat Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shabbat, Shabbat Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat 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 Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat 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 Shalom. Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam. Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam.
Thank you. Beautiful. So, Richard, would you welcome us on page 3? Welcome number 1.
The past, present, and future are timelessly linked in the spinning circle of life. Our past was the seed that became the present. We can make it bloom in the future if we nurture it with love, respect, and understanding of the shared culture and heritage that we call life.
Thank you. And so we'll continue now with the lighting of our candles. And if we have our candles and we'd like to light them, we can do that now. And this is a call and response, so we'll do that together. We renew ourselves for the week ahead so that we will have strength for ourselves, our families, and our part in making the world a better place. We kindle the lights of Shabbat as symbols of human enlightenment and human compassion to celebrate our coming together, to illuminate our lives and the warmth we find in our community. We remember the generations before us who lit candles as we do and found beauty and serenity in their light. Let us say together, Nae ha'or ba'olam, Nae ha'or ba'adam, Nae ha'or ba'shabbat, Nokir et or ha'shabbat. How wonderful is the light in the world. How wonderful is the light within our humanity. And how wonderful is the light of Shabbat, and we cherish the light of Shabbat.
נאה האור בעולם, נאה האור באדם, נאה האור בשבת, נוקיר את אור השבת. איפה אורי, אורי לי, איפה תקוותי, תקוותי בי, איפה כוחי, כוחי בי, לגמבה, לגמבה, איפה כוחי, כוחי בי, לגמבה, לגמבה. Where is my light? My light is in me. Where is my hope? My hope is in me. Where is my strength? My strength is in me and in you, and in you. Where is my strength? My strength is in me and in you, and in you.
Thank you. So we'll continue with the service with the values of humanistic Judaism, number 1 on page 8. And Jim is going to read that for us.
On Shabbat, we celebrate and reaffirm our Jewish identity. A Jew is someone who identifies with the history, culture, and future of the Jewish people. We make connections to our past through our ancestors and to our future by leading meaningful lives. We believe that Jewish identity is best preserved in a free, pluralistic environment that honors all cultures. We believe in the nobility of human fellowship and the joy of unity. The freedom and dignity of the Jewish people must go hand in hand with the freedom and dignity of every human being. Human beings possess the power and responsibility to shape their own lives, independent of supernatural authority. Jewish history is a human saga, a testament to the significance of human power and human responsibility. We believe in the gift of human reason and the strength of human potential to shape our own lives.
Yasha Kor, thank you. Our next musical selection will be The Times They Are A-Changin', number 22, page 57.
Come gather round people wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown, and accept it that soon you'll drench to the bone. If your time to you is worth saving, then you better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone, for the times they are a-changin'. Come writers and critics with prophecies of your pen, and keep your eyes wide, the chance won't come again. And don't speak too soon, for the wheel still can spin, and there's no telling what that is naming. For the loser now will be later to win, for the times they are a-changin'. Come senators, congressmen, please hold the call. Don't stand in the doorway, don't block up the hall, for he that gets hurt will be he who has stalled. There's a battle outside and it's raging. It'll soon shake your windows and rattle your walls, for the times they are a-changin'. Come mothers and fathers throughout the land, and don't criticize what you don't understand. Your sons and your daughters are beyond your command. Your old road is rapidly aging. Please get out the new one if you can lend a hand, for the times they are a-changin'. The alignment is wrong, but the person is cast. The slow one now will later be fast, as a present now will later be the past. The order is rapidly fading, and the first this one now will later be last, for the times they are a-changin'.
Thank you, Rebecca. I think that song is particularly meaningful now. Yes. So we'll continue our service with the sharing of joys, concerns, and sorrows on page 10. So we'll hear from our beautiful people now.
I'm going to stop the share so I can see people raising their hands. Okay. If you can use the raise hand icon, that would be great. If not, just kind of wave frantically at the camera. Okay. But if anybody has anything they want to share, please. Kathy?
So it's not a big thing, it's a little thing, but I'm getting my things in order so that I can apply to go back to school this year. It's been a long hiatus for me, so I have my plan in place. And I'm excited for it.
Mazel tov, that's wonderful. Anyone else that they want to talk about anything that's on their mind? Max?
Sorry, I can't figure out how to do the hand raising thing. We just got back from a trip to Oberlin to see our daughter who's working stage management on a play. And not only did we get to see a lovely play, we got to see her surrounded by peers who all value and respect her and value and respect each other. And it was really heartening to see, I mean, personally to see her, but just to see the love and community and respect among those kids was really nice.
Thank you. Congratulations to Lucy.
Yes.
Anybody else? I can see everybody, so you can all kind of wave at me if you want to, but Rebecca, you had something, and then Allison, I saw, no, Rebecca, did you have something?
Well, I was mostly just waving, but
Oh.
I could share news too. I got contacted by someone I've collaborated with before who offered me a role in a new play, which is very
Awesome.
exciting. I'm like, wow, I know people. Sometimes I don't even have to audition. You just want me, which is always nice when that happens. So it's like a developmental play through the Jewish Plays Project, which is really cool because I wanted to work with them because obviously I love their whole mission statement. And I love working on new works, and I'm just really grateful this director thought of me, and it's like a new casting person, so I'm just excited, and I wasn't expecting it at all, so it's just
Congratulations.
like, thank you.
That's wonderful. Allison, you can unmute yourself and tell us what your news is.
Shabbat Shalom. Really grateful you're here. I usually live in the UK, so I can't be on your live meetings. And this week of all weeks, it's just really a beautiful thing to have you here and alive and not so far away. And just thank you for the light, really. Thank you to that.
We're glad you're here. Thank
Yes.
you. Yeah, I actually wanted to say something, but Emmy, you go first. Emmy, you go first.
Well, not only did we see Lucy state manage a play, but I performed at Lincoln Center this week in an opera called Blind Injustice, which was about some exonerees and the Ohio Innocence Project. So we had a couple performances at Jazz at Lincoln Center this week, and it was really exciting.
Wonderful. That's amazing. So I did have something actually. I spent last weekend, I mentioned it at the last Shabbat, I spent last weekend in beautiful Kinsale, Ireland, on the south coast of Ireland, at a brand new Beatles festival. I got in on the ground floor and was helping the organizer, a man named Patrick Ryan, no relation. There are, if you throw a stone, you'll hit a Ryan in Ireland. Had a wonderful weekend, met a lot of nice people, saw a lot of friends that I already knew, saw a country I'd never been in before. If you've never been to Ireland, you need to go. It's gorgeous, even in January, February. It was difficult to come home. Never take a connecting flight from Dublin to New York. Connect in Amsterdam. Your bag will spend the weekend in Amsterdam and you won't. But I'm back and I had a really great time and I'm going to be doing it again next year. I'm helping with the organizing this time. So I'm very excited. And that was my weekend and it was good. And I also want to apologize for being negative when we first came on and were schmoozing. That was kind of, I didn't like coming home to a dark place. So that I want to apologize for. Anyway, thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay, well, we can move on. I'm going to share the screen again. And we are on page 16. So just one second. Let me go to that page. Okay. I guess Frank, you want to tell us about what
Yeah.
we're gonna talk about?
So for the discussion question for this week, I decided to go to one of our heroes, humanistic heroes, Maimonides. And he said, we each decide whether to make ourselves learned or ignorant, compassionate or cruel, generous or miserly. No one forces us. No one decides for us. No one drags us along one path or the other. We are responsible for what we are. So we'll throw that out for discussion. Susan, you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was my fault. What I was saying is I'm going to stop the share again and anybody who
Okay.
wants to say something should just wave their hand or raise their hand. And I see Anna's hand. Anna?
Well, that was interesting. I'd like to hear it again. What it brings to mind is there are a number of there's a question going around and there are a number of scientists that believe we don't have free will. So in the light of that, this comment of Maimonides is interesting.
Anyone have any other comments? Jim? Unmute yourself. Oh, were you?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I have to dispute the idea that scientists are thinking that because you're talking about proving something that's not approvable. I don't think scientists who are doing this, or at least people who are doing it, are working on a theoretical, assuming that nobody's going to actually check their data. To be frank with you, if we did have free will, we can't necessarily prove a negative in this case. And if we didn't have free will, then the fact that we're assuming we have free will, we could say, well, maybe we're programmed into it, but we have no way to prove. So I don't think it's safe to say that people don't have free will because there's no way to actually demonstrate that that's the case.
Thank you, Jim. Max, you had a comment?
Oh, well, just one that's sort of flippant and one that the Maimonides quote made me think of. I think this was from the philosopher Daniel Dennett, but I could be getting this attribution wrong. And it was, we might not have free will, but I choose to act as if I do.
Mm.
And that's, I guess, kind of along the lines of what the quote made me think of, which is that there are so many, both things and people, whether they be politicians or news outlets sort of deliberately trying to stoke our anger and fear, or even just, the phones in our hands deliberately trying to grab our attention and rattle our emotions up. I like to remind myself as often as I can that I might have some control over how I choose to respond to things.
Thank you, Max. We had a request in the chat to read the quote again. I'm gonna read it again, and then if more people have comments. The quote says, "We each decide whether to make ourselves learned or ignorant, compassionate or cruel, generous or miserly. No one forces us, no one decides for us, no one drags us along one path or the other. We are responsible for what we are." I hope that helps people who wanted to hear it again, and if anyone has comments. Anita, you have a comment? Unmute yourself.
I am reminded of the poem Invictus by William Ernest Henley. The last two lines of which are, "I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." I'm not going to read the whole thing, but
No, I hear
that's,
what you're
if you're
saying.
familiar with it, then you know.
Mhm. Thank you,
Out,
Anita.
out of the night that covers me, black as a pit from pole to pole is how it starts.
I think that's a good point. Thank you. Anyone else have any other comments or anything about the quote? Allison, you have your hand up. Feel free to unmute and talk.
Hey, I'm so sorry I don't, this is all my stuff. You know Stanley Milgram. Stanley Milgram was always amazed. He was born in America and not destroyed like some of his family in Europe, but he did a lot of work. You know this, about how we're acted upon by people, and he did lots of research. People only remember the dark research, that we are obedient to authority and we are easily influenced. But if you know his work, I mean, he did his work so that, you know, we know that we're vulnerable, so we can be strong in the places where we might be weak. But he also did a lot of research that was about how close we are and how interconnected we are and how easy it was to make us kind and how much we enjoy being kind. So, you know, a lot of really good people have thought, I mean, especially just after World War II, how do we not do that again? And they found out a lot. So here's to them.
Thank you.
I can say
Um,
something else.
Yes, Anna, go ahead.
So this is, first of all, one has to, I'm not a scientist, one has to understand what is meant by free will. Then also, this is a very old discussion. I mean, I grew up in a religious environment, and, you know, the question was always, if God decides everything and is in charge of everything, then how do we make choices between good and bad? That's a very old discussion. How can we be responsible for our choices if God is in charge of everything and knows what's going to happen, et cetera, et cetera? So that's all. But I might as well live, even if free will is whatever that is supposed to be, even if it's an illusion, it's better to live with that illusion.
Thank you, Anna. I just would like to comment on that too, and then David, we'll get to you. See, that's the thing, okay? Since I don't believe in a supernatural power guiding this whole thing, I know I'm responsible for what I choose to be, and that's what I believe is free will. We don't have anybody directing this in any way that's supernatural or weird. You know, I think that it's up to every person to decide what to be, and some people choose to be kind and compassionate and nice, and some people choose to be venal and petty and disgusting, and you know, that's a choice they make. I don't think God is making it happen. You know, but I understand what you're saying, and I absolutely get it. So, you know, all right, we have a couple more other hands. We've got David and Patricia. So, David.
It reminds me of Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. Essentially, like, you may not be able to choose your circumstances or the things that happen to you, but you can choose how you respond to them. You can choose to do the right thing, to do the moral thing. And no matter what they can take away from you, they can't take away your private thoughts in your mind still.
Thank you, David.
Victor.
And Patricia?
In Stoicism, there's an important concept of the dichotomy of control, what we control and what we don't. We control our thoughts, our perceptions, and our actions only. Everything else is out of our control, and we spend most of our time with the out of control things.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else have any other comments? Or Frank, do you want to, conclude this and move on to the next section, or whatever is up to you?
Yeah, I was just going to say that we should just look at the quote itself. And it said, we each decide whether to make ourselves learned or ignorant. We decide that. And when we don't ask ourselves why we do things, and we just take for granted what other people say and do, we're not going along with that idea. And so I like this quote very much, because we see it today. We see it all around us. We see people who are purposely deciding on cruelty, because that's the point. The cruelty is the point in some of these cases. And so it's a lesson. And yes, Maimonides lived a long time ago, but I think whatever he said is very, very appropriate for now. So anyway, let's continue now with our Devar Torah. We have been kind of delving into what the Torah has to say to us as humanistic Jews, and some of our members have done really great jobs in actually doing that. So Max is going to be doing our little Dvar Torah now. So we welcome that.
Thank you. I hope to add myself to the roster of people doing an acceptable job, but we'll see how it goes. And thank you to the Devar Torah committee for letting me get up here and share my thoughts. This week's Parsha is from Exodus. It's called Beshalach, which can be translated to mean when he went out. And the portion is packed with action, a lot of which you will probably recognize from the Haggadah. It covers the flight out of Egypt, the crossing of the Sea of Reeds, the destruction of the Egyptian forces. There are two big songs expressing thanks for killing the Egyptians in a generally terrifying and impressive manner. There is a lot of complaining about where food and water is going to come from. But honestly, it does seem to me, if you are out in the wilderness without food and water, that is a very sensible concern to have. And finally, there is a big battle, which ends not only with an Israelite victory, but also with a promise to essentially commit genocide against their enemy. So there is a lot in the portion to talk about. And generally, when I think about this portion, I feel this immediate impulse to launch into a diatribe about the sheer enormity of the appalling behavior it contains. But when I read it over to prepare for this presentation, I found that I was drawn to a completely different part of the story, specifically the instructions for collecting manna, which I know is riveting stuff, but bear with me because I'm going to try to go somewhere. Basically, the rules are this. You have a long road ahead of you, but go out every morning and you will find food to keep you going. Some days you will find a lot of it. Some days you will only get a little, but you will find that if you do go collecting, you will have enough to make it through the day. And there's only two things that you can't do. The first is you can't hoard it. If you try to save the manna for later, it goes bad. The second thing you can't do is to not go actively collect it. The manna doesn't just jump into your basket on its own. And why I'm drawn to this, and not to make absolutely everything about politics, But the truth is, we do have a long walk in the wilderness ahead of us. And we don't know how many years it's going to be. You know, the orange guy could have a heart attack tomorrow morning, and the impulses to authoritarianism and to white Christian nationalism that we talked about last Shabbat, those would still be prominent political forces. So we've got to find a way to keep ourselves fed, whether that means psychologically, intellectually, or spiritually, for want of a better word. And I think that kind of nourishment is no less vital to our survival than food. There's a theater artist that I work often with, playwright and director named Edward Einhorn. Some of you saw his Exegog last Passover. He works a lot with artists from Eastern Europe. And through him, I recently learned something fascinating about Ukraine, a nation very literally under authoritarian assault. The arts in Ukraine are thriving. Book sales are off the charts. Theaters in Kyiv are standing room only. In Kharkiv, where people are routinely driven underground into bomb shelters, performances continue in the shelters. People huddle together with rockets exploding above them and listen to music, or to a play, or to poetry. Because when things are at their worst, that's when we need art the most. And I know that drama and music and poetry don't do it for everyone. So I think the question to ask yourself is, what nourishes you? You know, what is your manna, if you will? Unsurprisingly for me, stories, whether that's from literature or theater or film, have always been a big part of what nourishes me. When I was in my early teens, I had some bad medical issues that had me essentially bedridden in pain for about 1.5 years. And what got me through that was audiobooks. And I would love to brag and say it was Proust and Dickens and Graham Greene, but the truth is that most of it was, you know, Tom Clancy and Stephen King and Jerry Pournelle. But I am going to offer no judgments to my 15-year-old self, and I'm going to make no apologies for him, because I think whatever gets you through the wilderness is what gets you through the wilderness. Lately in our house, we've been listening to more music. We've been spending less time on screens and more with friends and neighbors. And this last part is crucial. We have been relying on the We Rate Dogs daily calendar. Mm-hmm. This is today's dog. He is absolutely adorable. And the rules for collecting manna apply. We have to make the conscious choice every day to go out and seek the things that feed us, because they aren't going to come to us by themselves. But when we go seeking them, they are there. And some days we find a lot to enjoy, and some days we don't find much. But the act of consciously going out to seek sustenance for the spirit, it almost always manages to help. And in this analogy that I'm spinning out, I think the equivalent of hoarding manna, to me, means trying to keep others from having it. You know, trying not to find joy in your own joy, but in disparaging other people's joy. What my daughter learned in kindergarten to call yucking someone's yum. Mm-hmm. And growing up, I often felt the way to demonstrate my sophistication was to cynically knock something down. You know, if I liked one thing, I had to point out how other things were rubbish. But I learned that by judging what brings other people joy, really the only thing that happens is joy got sucked away from my own life. And now I am trying more to just like what I like and not worry so much about what other people like. And I find when I do that, I have more joy. And I do not mean this talk to come off as like Little Mary Sunshine. You know, like, oh, don't look at the bad parts of the world. Just drop on your rose-colored glasses and smell the flowers and everything will be fine. Because everything won't be fine. And I am not saying don't go out and march and protest and argue and call out bigotry and hate. You're such a downer if you do that. Because yeah, we have to go out and march and we have to fight for the world we believe in. But we're not getting that world next week. And we're not getting it next month. We're not getting it next year. We're not going to get it for several years. We've got a long walk in the wilderness coming. And no one can march long on an empty stomach or on an empty spirit. And the only way we're going to get through this is if we keep ourselves fed. So my last thought is that whatever it is that feeds you, I hope you go out every day to gather it. And those are my thoughts. Thank you for letting me share them. Next spot, there is another secular Devar Torah from another congregation member, and I think we will still be in Exodus. Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and back to Rabbi Frank.
Thank you, Max. I particularly appreciated all of your allusions, as my husband is a New York actor, and we spend half of our marital interactions talking to each other in film and play dialogue. So it's it's so great to connect with that on so many levels in our congregation. No matter who you talk to, it seems like we have all of these connections to art and music and theater, all these wonderful things. Our next song is it's called Cheshbon HaNefesh.
I'm gonna share again.
Yes, and we usually hear this term around Rosh Hashanah. It talks about self-analysis and how we kind of look inside to figure out where we're going and how we're going to do that. So the song is number 6 on page 43.
Down the bottom.
Great. Heshbon HaNefesh. How shall we know what is right? Searching within, seeking to understand. Heshbon HaNefesh. What is our task? How can we bridge the gap of thought and deed? How can we succeed? Finding the way, building a better world. This is our quest. Heshbon HaNefesh.
Thank you.
Okay.
So now we will continue with the reading, Our Families, the first reading on page 28. Emmy will help us out with that.
There are many ways to connect. There are many ways to belong. Some people find a loving partner and choose commitment. Some have children and nurture them with tender care. Others live the single life. Strangers meet strangers and become good friends. Good friends can become as close as family. Clans and tribes, nations and peoples, all embrace their members and give them the security of identity and roots. The ever-changing contemporary Jewish family challenges our notions and stereotypes of a model family unit. Many Jews who have felt excluded from the tribal family in years past still hope to find their place within the Jewish community. Secular culture has new models of what constitutes a family. Single mothers and fathers, non-married adults who co-parent, gay couples, couples without children, and families of one are only some of the examples of the expanded definition of a modern family.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll continue now with our Mishaberach for those in need, names and refuah shlema on page 29. So we have Any names especially want to mention for refuah shlema?
I have to stop sharing, but are we gonna read the section first?
Are we? Yes, we are.
Yeah, sorry. Up on the screen.
In this community, where we find strength and common purpose, we now turn our minds and hearts toward those who need our love, who are ill, who are lonely, who suffer pain, or who have been wronged.
Now I'm gonna stop the share, and if anybody has anybody that they're remembering who's ill or needs loving thoughts, please raise your hand, use the raise hand button or wave at me. Nobody? Wow. Okay. Judith?
My friend Robert and my friend Hannah are struggling with illness.
Thank you, Judith. Michael and Devera said Stephen Foster, who is ill with lung cancer. Anyone else thinking of anyone today who's ill or Judith? Yes, again.
No, I'm lowering my hand.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Your hand was still up. That's why I asked. Anyone else? No? Okay, I'm going to start the share again, and we can.
Okay.
Let me just do that.
Max and Emmy had their hands up.
Oh, thank you, Jim, for seeing that. I didn't see that. I'm sorry. Thank you, Max and Emmy.
I have a friend from high school who went to the hospital a few days ago with a brain aneurysm, and she's doing all right, but I'm thinking about her.
And I have a young patient who, in her 30s, who has stage 4 cancer right now, struggling.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? And thank you for seeing that Max and Emmy had their hand up, Jim. I was on a different screen and I didn't see. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to.
May all who suffer know they are not alone. May they experience refuah shlema, the renewal of body and spirit.
May the source of strength that dwells so deep within us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Shalom. Makom hakoach v'toteinu v'torota v'racha mechavroteinu. May those in need of healing know refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Shalom.
Thank you. So we will continue with our memorial number 2 on page 31. Death is inevitable, but out of our grief can come understanding. Through our sorrows, we join those who have known bereavement before us and those who have yet to do so. May we live wisely, courageously, and usefully. May the lives they led give us inspiration for the lives we have yet to live. Zecher Tzadik Li'avracha, we cherish the memory of our loved ones. So I'd like to ask any names for our memorial.
There's a couple. I'm going to take the liberty of starting. Today is my mother's first yard site. So it's been a tense week. just feeling kind of blue and horrible. I got through today, but stuff. Yeah, so I'm thinking of my mother today. And I'm kind of wondering where the year went. Life has a way of moving on. So, Rebecca, did I see your hand up? Okay, unmute yourself then.
Yeah. Two friends that I went to high school with or grew up with for longer, within like 2 days, both of them, both by their own will separately, but both took their own lives. So I'm thinking of both of them. One is Matthew Keir and the other one is Alicia Cologne.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We had a couple in the chat. Peter says his first cousin, Melissa Batten Caswell, on our second year site, which was yesterday. He says our family misses her, and so do her two sisters, Amanda and Blythe. And Allison wants to remember Debbie Alden. Anybody else remembering a yard site or thinking of someone who has died today? No? Okay.
I like to mention Rabbi Jody's mom, who passed in January. Our thoughts are with you.
Thank you, Frank, for that. Okay, I'm gonna share again so we can sing Zecher Tzedek.
Zecher Tzadik.
Yep, there we go.
Zecher Tzadik Livracha. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. With our tears and our sorrow, we remember. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. With our courage and our strength, we do not forget. Acts of kindness, deeds of courage will remain. Death cannot take that which is love in our hearts. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. May the memory of good people bless our days. Zecher Tzadik Livracha.
Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. So we will continue now with our Kiddush. It's on page 33, wine, and Kathy will lead us in the wine.
We celebrate the fruit of the vine and nature's gifts. As we bend nature to our pleasure, we also think about our duties as caretakers of this planet. We dedicate this wine to the joy of Shabbat, to the lives of generations past and generations to come, and to the planet that sustains us. Let us say together, Naim Ha'im Ba'alam, Naim Ha'im Banu, Naim Megadle Pri Hagafen L'chaim. We celebrate the life within the world. We celebrate the life within us. We cherish those who grow and tend the fruit of the vine, L'chaim, to life.
Naim HaChaim Ba'olam, Naim HaChaim Ba'anu, Naim Megadle Pri Hagafen L'chaim.
And challah, I think Susan's going to do
Yep,
the
it was
challah.
me. Baking bread together is an ancient custom in many cultures. It signifies sharing, fellowship, and coming together in peace. We reenact this ritual together as a sign of our common humanity, our care for one another, and for those less fortunate than ourselves. Let us say together, Na'e matnat hamazon, Na'e amal kapenu, Na'e lechem haaretz, b'tei avon. How wonderful is the gift of food, how wonderful is the work of our hands, how wonderful is the bread of the earth. We cherish those who bring forth bread from the earth.
Naehamat nad Hamazon, Naehama kapenu, Naelekem haaretz, B'tei avon.
Thank you. So now everybody has had their fill of food and drink. We'll continue. I had some thoughts. Since it is Black History Month, I thought this article by Victoria Rags, it's from the Atlanta Jewish Community. It's from February 2023. And I thought it would be appropriate for us. Victoria Rags is she is a contributor to the Atlantic Jewish Community. And she is a person of color. And she wrote this article called Celebrating Black History Month in Jewish Spaces. Jews of color, especially Black Jews, are regularly harmed in some Jewish spaces, even in organizations with the best intentions around welcoming and belonging. As a community, we must intentionally come together and advocate for justice in our world to create a future that's whole. Now, I know as humanistic Jews, I think we have a little better track record when it comes to this kind of stuff than maybe some other Jewish communities, but it's worthwhile to hear it. No culture or religion is full of people who look exactly the same, and Jews are no different. Together, we are multi-ethnic, multicultural people who continue to build an evolving Jewish culture that includes a religion and a nation. Yet the normative view of a Jew in the US, both inside and outside the Jewish community, is an Ashkenazi Jew from Eastern Europe. The ways in which we teach our history have often left some people out of the full story. It brings credibility to us as a community when we accurately display the depth and range of who we are as a people. Black History Month can be a catalyst to come to terms with the Black Jews among us. To those who want to be a true ally, there are a few actions you can take, and she lists some. When people are marginalized, when people in marginalized groups tell you about bias or hardships they are facing, believe them. Center and uplift Black perspectives and voices, suggest them for opportunities, mention them on your social media, and hire them in positions of authority. Discriminatory behavior or statements. Use your privilege to speak where other people would be silenced. Offer resources to empower and not to make dependent. Celebrate the accomplishments of Black people, especially women. Transformative change is possible if all marginalized groups have a seat at the table, but not only by being included in organizations, they must also be part of the leadership in deciding and creating policy. Our institutions should be committed to cultivating actions, not just statements, of a truly inclusive nature, which aligns with our Jewish values of teshuvah and tikkun olam. Establishing clear and firm procedures and practices that center the humanity of all community members is one of the most impactful strategies for advancing racial equity and justice. Our liberation as humans is bound up together. Let us all come together to honor Black History Month because the achievements of Black people inside our community and out have contributed to our nation's greatness. And we are part of that collective story of America. We have come a long way toward inclusion in this country, but there is still much work to do as we are sliding backwards. So I think it's worthwhile to think about those things again.
Thank you, Frank. I'm going to share again for the last part of the. Okay. Okay, can people see?
Yeah, and Anna is going to help us with the concluding thoughts on number 1 on page 37.
Concluding thoughts. Each of us is here for a temporary stay on Earth. For what purpose, I don't know. But it is plain that we exist for our fellow humans, in the first place for those upon whose smiles and welfare our happiness depends, and the next for those unknown to us personally, but to whose destinies we are bound by the tie of sympathy. 100 times a day, I remind myself that my inner and outer life depends on the labor of others, living and dead, that I must exert myself in order to give that I must exert myself in order to give in the measure as I have received and am still receiving. Albert Einstein.
Thank you. Thank you. So our concluding song is Heritage. It's number 12 on page 50.
Great books of wisdom, pages to study, teachings of sages throughout the ages, milestones and rituals, rhythm of seasons, seeking authentic lives of purpose and reason. History and culture link us together, music and song bring voice to every measure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Beautiful music. So, Sue, we have some announcements.
Announcements, yes. So we've got some things coming up the next few weeks in February. First is Kids School is meeting on Sunday at the usual place. And children arrive about 3 o'clock for Gila Circle with their families and then go to class till 5:30. The board meeting is Monday evening from 7:30 to 9:30 p.m. Members are always welcome to attend the board meetings. They just have to let me know in advance and I will put them on the agenda, or they can just sit in on the meeting. The classes that Rabbi Semach is still doing, Bible Through Humanist Eyes, is still meeting every Tuesday and Thursday from 10:30 to 11 a.m. On Wednesday nights, we have our Zoom schmooze every week from 8 to 10 p.m. Members and non-members, visitors can come and hang out and just chat about various things. Kathy usually moderates that. On Mondays from 7 to 9 p.m., we have our Talmud study, and the next meeting for that is Monday the 17th. I didn't see it listed for next week. I could be wrong on that. It could just not be in the calendar, but check our website. And our next Shabbat, which is going to be in person at our normal location, is going to be Jewish music and anti-Semitism with a guest speaker. Her name is, I don't have her name, but I'm going to look it up right now. We would like you to come and join us. If you want to come, you need to RSVP so you can get the Shabbat location and the time. But we'd certainly love you to attend. Yes, the speaker is going to be, I'm looking at her name, is Tina Fruhoff, and she's a musicologist who's going to come talk to us about Jewish music. Those are all the announcements I have. I don't know if anybody else has any other announcements. Kathy, can you think of anything else that we need to announce?
I encourage everyone that's in the New York area on the 28th to come to our in-person Shabbat. We haven't had the attendance that we're looking for in-person, and in order to make in-person events feasible for us, since it does cost us, we would really appreciate more of an attendance. It makes it worthwhile. So thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, we rent the space since we don't have our own building, so it would be nice if more people came to in-person events. We get a lot of people saying they want them, but then they don't come. So we'd appreciate it if people made an effort to come. Okay, so now I'm going to turn this over to Rabbi Frank to introduce Rabbi Jody.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sue. This evening's guest speaker is one of our distinguished SHJ rabbis. Rabbi Jody Kornfeld founded Beth Haverim Humanistic Jewish Community in Deerfield, Illinois in 2003. She holds a Master's of Jewish Studies and a Doctor of Science in Jewish Studies from Spertus College in Chicago. Rabbi Kornfeld was ordained by the International Institute for Secular Humanistic Judaism in October 2009. Rabbi Kornfeld has presented at many educational conferences for Jewish educators and coordinated two national conferences for humanistic Jewish educators. Together with Rabbi Adam Shalom, Rabbi Kornfeld has recently published an important book for our movement, Contemporary Humanistic Judaism, Beliefs, Values, and Practices, and will share an overview of this book with us and how it came to be, and there'll be a question and answer period afterwards. So welcome, Rabbi Jody.
Thank you. Thank you for that really warm welcome. Thank you for letting me participate and be a part of this beautiful service that you held. I'm moved by a lot of these readings and may actually ask for a copy to see if I can incorporate some of that. So thank you very much. As Rabbi Frank said, I was invited to sort of discuss how this book came to be, and then a little bit into it, we'll drill down a little bit on the one part of it about Jewish culture. So the book, if you don't have it yet, looks like this, Contemporary Humanistic Judaism, and the official publication date was January 1st, 2025. It has reached at varying times #1 on the Jewish Life new releases on Amazon.com, which Rabbi Adam and I have had to sort of break ourselves of the habit of keep checking that, and not be sort of sucked into the need for that kind of reinforcement. But this book is part of the JPS Anthologies of Jewish Thought series. As I understand it, because it was slightly before I joined the project, JPS invited a proposal to be submitted about humanistic Judaism. And I was fortunate to be asked to join the project by Rabbi Adam Shalom as one of the editors in 2021. Our initial proposal was for an updated version of the 1995 book, Judaism for a Secular Age. That was a collection of writings about the philosophical and historical roots of secular Jewish thought and its leading thinkers. That proposal was rejected because it was not what JPS had in mind. Instead, we were redirected to focus solely on contemporary humanistic Judaism. And while that former idea of updating the 1995 book still remains of value, the redirection allowed us, as we state in the preface, to fairly and comprehensively present the contemporary humanistic Jewish experience and core issues addressed by the movement. It defines the movement and helps answer many challenging questions humanistic Jews face from other Jews. Among them, how can you or your movement be Jewish and celebrate Judaism if you don't believe in God? It's our intention that the audience would include humanistic Jews who want a deeper and more thorough understanding of the form of Judaism that gives their lives meaning, as well as Jews in other denominations who, for reasons that we still can't figure out, just seem never to have heard of us, or if they have, they don't fully get it. And we also hope that students of comparative Judaism or comparative religion will find the volume useful. The book that you see is the product of our efforts over many months, and those months turned into years. Over that time, we learned about writing it, editing it, getting the necessary permissions, reviewing the copy-edited version, reviewing the page proofs, indexing it, marketing it, and at long last sharing it with congregations like yours. And so since its publication and release, it's been favorably reviewed and received on the online version of Jerusalem Post, jpost.com. There are a couple of positive reviews on Amazon.com, and it was positively reviewed in Jewish Chicago. In writing it, Rabbi Shalom and I developed a pattern and a rhythm. We would each write the introduction to our own self-assigned chapters and the introductions to the essays in that chapter. We'd then send that chapter to the other for editing, and following that process, hammer out our final edits, or what we thought might be our final edits, over Zoom. The chapter then was sent on to the managing editor at JPS, Joy Weinberg, and she returned it with her keen edits and suggestions. That then, as you can imagine, led to our revising the chapter yet again, submitting it again, and more often than not, Joy would have additional comments and suggestions, sending it back one more time. The process, though, ultimately ensured that throughout the book, we said what we meant and meant what we said. And that may ring a bell. That's a familiar movement axiom. And it also made certain that we avoided the potential pitfall about being defensive about our place in the Jewish world, or risking being negative about other denominations and practices. Our focus was solely on the positive, just like we believe humanistic Judaism is positive overall. And despite the title having 3 specified subjects, beliefs, values, practices, the book is divided into 4 parts: beliefs and ethics, identity, culture, and Jewish life. After a general introduction, each part is supported by between 2 and 5 chapters, and each chapter contains several essays related to the topic. We also created a study and discussion guide for the book that is available at no charge on the JPS website, jps.org. Beliefs and ethics, that was part 1. There are the fundamental and foundational elements that are considered. This includes the God question, ethics, positive humanism, and spirituality. Part 2 addresses identity. And in its introduction, we write, humanistic Judaism brings a new paradigm to the question, who is a Jew? It finds the old dogmatic and hierarchical approach to Jewish identity unacceptable. With no Sinai covenant or heavenly commander, the meaning of becoming Jewish, or being Jewish for that matter, is to be found through identification with the historical experience and culture of the Jewish people. This is supported by the most recent Pew Research Center data in their study of American Jews in 2020. And in that, a portion of that study is included as the appendix to the book. And that study found that a majority of American Jews view Jewish identity as cultural. 53% of the participants responded that being Jewish is mainly a matter of ancestry, culture, or ancestry and culture, not religion alone, and not religion even in combination with those other choices. This part, the part on identity, also addresses issues of welcoming and inclusion, adoption of humanistic Judaism in contradistinction to the conversion process that you would find in other denominations, intermarriage, and Israel Zionism. Part 4, and I know I'm skipping 3, that's on purpose. Part 4 is focused on how humanistic Judaism is lived, with examples of ketubot, liturgy, a bar mitzvah speech from one of the city congregation's own students, and essays on sitting Shiva and on education. Because you see, without such examples, contemporary humanistic Judaism would appear unrealized and merely an intellectual exercise. At its core, adjacent to the positive humanism that makes up the first half of our movement's name, Humanistic Judaism, as you know, centers Jewish culture as the basis for Jewish identity. And that leads to part 3 of the book, Culture. So I want to spend a few minutes talking about that section and how we made some of the choices that we did for what is in it. Religion, of course, is a part of Jewish culture, but it's not the only part, and it's not the dominant part. That would be too narrow. And I want to share with you part of a very short essay by the late Yehuda Bauer that we included. It actually is one of my favorite selections that we put in the book, and it had appeared in that prior version, Judaism for a Secular Age. And so we introduced it by saying that Bauer succinctly points out that religion, particularly in its Western cultural understanding, focused on theological beliefs, scripture, liturgy, and ritual practices, is insufficient to encompass all of the cultural expressions of the Jewish people over the centuries. All the more so, without Jewish culture in its many varieties as part of the equation, a purely religious Judaism would be incomplete. And so, quoting Bauer, Bible is Judaism, Talmud is Judaism, everyday life is Judaism, Jewish history is Judaism, Jewish poetry is Judaism, Jewish customs are Judaism. Jewish food is Judaism. Jewish jokes are Judaism, just as religion is Judaism. But you cannot argue that Judaism equals the religious beliefs of Jews. First, because these beliefs were and are different, even mutually contradictory. And second, because religion was and is just one aspect of Jewish existence. Today, for many Jews, it is not even that. Judaism, then, is everything that the Jewish people in their very long history have produced. Judaism is Jewish civilization. Judaism is Jewish culture. Now, to enumerate those various elements, as Bauer did, of different parts of Jewish culture, that's one thing. But to give actual living examples of it, it's more resonant with the reader and with the student of humanistic Judaism. Jewish culture is full, diverse, and rich. It includes all manner of cultural material produced by Jews wherever they lived, in whatever language they spoke, and in whatever medium they used. We were very careful and we paid very specific attention to point out that Jewish culture was not monopolized by Ashkenazi and by implication male Jews. Alluding to the essay that we included by Amos Oz, A Full Cart or an Empty One, Thoughts on Jewish Culture, the secular cart or canon has never been empty. And its fullness, its breadth, and its width continues to grow. There is no authority that deems it closed and immutable as of a certain point in time. From this perspective, it is an expansion of the notion of canon, generally thought to be a closed body of works. And it's incumbent on us to add to the canon and also to retain cultural literacy about our own texts. We included an essay called Recovering Our Stories by Rabbi Daniel Friedman, where he describes the need for this because, as he says, those stories offer a rich metaphorical vocabulary that makes possible what rational philosophic discourse cannot. The dramatic display of human emotions, values, and dilemmas in time-honored scenarios featuring compelling characters. Those characters, of course, include one of the most compelling, the human-created literary character of God. Moving to contemporary text, we included excerpts from 3 Jewish writers, that used Jewish literature as what we called a mirror in which to see one's own experience. And so many options, but we chose 3. And the writers that we chose were Nathan Englander, Edgar Carrot, and Nicole Krauss. Non-textual material, likewise, is part of Jewish culture. My essay addresses the existence of Jewish art throughout the Jewish historical experience, and the essay by Cantor Jonathan Friedman explores music by, for, and as humanistic Jews. And as I said, we wanted to get past that sort of myopic view, the only Ashkenazic view. So when we were writing, for instance, in some of our introductions, that Yiddish writers, and it would include obviously Ayel Peretz and Shalom Aleichem, but we made it a point to include Devorah Baron and Katie Modolowski, that we didn't want it only to be male dominated. We wanted to make sure that the idea that others are Jews and others ought to be represented, Jews of color, Mizrahi Jews, Sephardic Jews, etc. And then finally, we conclude the book with a section that we call Go Forth and Learn. And it gets its name from a famous Talmudic story. And it goes as follows. A famous Talmudic story describes Rabbi Hillel welcoming a potential convert by encapsulating the Torah in the phrase, "What is hurtful to you, do not do to your fellow," and then adding, "Now, go forth and learn." Traditional Jewish study considers the Torah and Talmud and their commentaries to be a bottomless library. The open canon of contemporary humanistic Judaism, though, it's even wider. It includes the Torah and Talmud and also encompasses critical Jewish history and archaeology, artistic Jewish culture, Jewish food, Jewish music and movies, and much more. It was the starting point and necessarily incomplete because more material, it relates to each chapter, but more material needs to constantly be added. Indeed, as soon as the manuscript was submitted, the list was already in need of updating because new books were published, new movies came out, new music was produced. And we invite, through the discussion guide, we invite the reader to say and to contemplate, what would you add to that? What would you add to this list? What would be your part of the Jewish cultural canon? Because while we had a lot of good ideas, it's not exhaustive. It's not exhaustive. Like the rest of the book, which we view as an invitation to the reader, Go Forth and Learn is the reader's opportunity to expand what is set out there. We're really very proud of this book. We hope, we think, it's an important contribution to our movement and to everyone's personal experience of humanistic Judaism. We say in the book that this movement is what gives meaning to our lives, to Rabbi Shalom and to my life. It is a way that we express our Judaism. And centering Jewish culture is very resonant to me. I grew up in the conservative movement. Ultimately, I skipped the Reform movement altogether and then found humanistic Judaism. But I grew up in a household that the question would be asked all the time, did you know they're Jewish? You know, we'd be watching a television show. Did you know they're Jewish, right? Or you'd take a look at a sports figure. I mean, Sandy Koufax, oh my goodness. But you know he's Jewish. Yes, I know he's Jewish, right? And so I'm a huge Cubs fan. And right now the Cubs are in pursuit of the free agent from the Astros, Alex Bregman. And Bregman's Jewish. And so my son, of course, texted me and said, did you see the Cubs are trying to get Bregman? And I said, I did see that. And he said, you know, he's Jewish. And so I realized, I don't know if that's a measure of my success as a parent, as a rabbi, as a Jew, as a humanistic Jew, but I've passed that on to another generation. And so when we can find that, what we discover is nobody cares as a cultural Jew, nobody cares how religious they are. Koufax didn't pitch on Yom Kippur, but he didn't go to synagogue. He felt that his position as a Jewish, really a star, it made him a role model. And so as a role model, he felt that it would set a bad example to play on Yom Kippur. He was probably about as secular as you could come, as you could be. So that question, he's Jewish? Did you know that? Did you know that writer is Jewish? That expands the notion of what Rabbi Wein calls in his essay kinship, describing the Jewish people more accurately as a kinship, that we have a shared tradition, we have shared ancestry, that people who want to self-identify as a humanistic Jew identify with that experience, with that tradition, with that ability to say, they're Jewish, so am I. And so I think that we've got time for questions and answers. This is in really broad terms that I wanted to set out for you what the book is about. And we invite questions if you have them for now, but also as you're reading it, you can let Rabbi Frank know, and he knows how to get in touch with me, rather than just generally giving out my email account. So knowing that we are on multiple platforms, so I won't do that. I will stop myself there, but I'm happy to entertain any questions. It truly was and is an ongoing process. I have to say that having co-written and co-edited the book, I learned so much. And I started from a place of feeling fairly competent about humanistic Judaism, but nonetheless, I was able to learn so much more, to enrich my understanding, and to enable me to, I hope, better articulate what our movement's about and to share it with a wider audience.
Does anybody have any questions? Yes, I see some hands. I'm gonna call on people, Rabbi Jody.
Sure.
Rich?
Thank you for that thoughtful and stimulating talk. I do want to mention that there were 3 prominent Jews in the baseball free agent market this winter. And not only did my team, the Mets, get none of them, but they lost Harrison Bader. So I hope you get Bregman, even though he was on the cheating Astros team. But that's not the question I want to ask you. The question I want to ask you about is, as you heard in our service, we have this line, a Jewish someone who identifies with the history, culture, and future of the Jewish people. And you alluded to that in your talk and I think in your book. And I want to know if that's really enough, because I know that the other Jewish streams have much more rigid and dogmatic ideas of who is a Jew. But, you talked about this background that you have and your connections and your own training and coming out of the conservative movement. I know the people on this Zoom tonight, some come from very well-informed backgrounds, and there are plenty of people who, their kids turned 11 and they decided, hey, we should join the shul so that these kids can have some event when they turn 13, and they didn't get any of things that you and I got. And so I wonder whether between the Orthodox view of who is a Jew and a mere identification with history, that go and learn doesn't require more than that.
So I think the important part is the learn part, go and learn. So those of us who engage in adoption ceremonies, where an individual adopts humanistic Judaism and a community adopts that person into their community, generally follows a period of study. Because if you're going to identify with the historic experience of the Jewish people, you really need to know what the historic Jewish experience of the Jewish people, what is it that you are affirming your connection with? Some of it is what Rabbi Shalom likes to call Jew adjacent. So they find themselves in a family where some people are Jewish and some people are not. And so they may want to learn more. Their identification may come over a process of a length of time by celebrating Jewish holidays, by understanding the origins of those holidays, by singing the music that we might have in liturgy and so on. But I think that you're right. The accusation that I have heard about humanistic Judaism is twofold. One is it's Judaism light, and it's lox and bagel Judaism. And nothing could be further from the truth. It is deep, it is complex, it involves wrestling with really serious issues, wrestling with the God question, wrestling with the idea that you are responsible for your own life, wrestling with the fact that this is the only world that we have, and in that world, good things happen and bad things happen. And when you take that kind of an approach, yes, indeed, bad things do happen, not because there's some big cosmic reason for it, not because there's a divine supernatural being who's pulling the strings and sort of making things happen, but because sometimes bad things happen. And while that might sound like it's not comforting, it's honest. And for me, it's honest and it's realistic. And so if you're going to identify as a humanistic Jew, it's not a lot of cherry picking. You know, you kind of have to say, yes, philosophically, this is what I believe. I mean, I've had members, a handful over the course of the 20 plus years that Beth Chavirim's been in existence, who said to me, we love what you're doing here, but I've discovered that I really want a little more tradition. I want what I was comfortable growing up with. I want, you know, this for my children, etc. And my answer is, I am thrilled for you. And they look at me kind of strange, like I'm losing a member, but I'm like saying, go, right? And the reason I say that is because I am so happy that they wrestled with their Judaism to be able to reach that kind of a conclusion. And I think that people, so that's like an exit story, but I think that the entry story is for people who find that other denominations don't work for them, whether they were born Jewish, whether they're choosing to be Jewish, and they decide, I'm going to wrestle with these questions, and I would like a like-minded community where I can do that. I hope that answers your question.
Patricia, you had a question for Rabbi Jody?
Well, I'm 82 years old and I'm not a Jew. I was first introduced to this over 25 years ago when I dated a man. He was the first Jewish person I ever knew. And when I went to Shabbat, I thought they would hate me because I wasn't Jewish. And I found just the opposite. And so I went to Shabbat with him, but when the relationship broke up, it just kind of fell away. And then I was taking classes at a local university, and there was more studies, Judaic studies. And I started to attend a Reform temple located in Binghamton, New York, where I live. And it just hit me. But prior to that, I was raised Episcopalian, took communion, sang in the choir, but I never believed. And there was no one I could talk to. I felt so very alone with my thoughts. When I was 20, I found the Unitarian Universalist group, but it still didn't make, I don't know, it wasn't as comfortable. When I heard about secular humanistic Judaism, I couldn't believe it. I was absolutely shocked. And so I do Talmud every Monday night, and I'm here just about every other week. And it has meant so much to me because I don't feel alone anymore with my beliefs, and it's okay. There's still nobody to talk to about it except the people that I know in Talmud study.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't tell you what your book has done for me. It has been just amazing. I was reading again the other night, and I went to sleep with a smile on my face. And I felt comforted. So thank you so much.
Oh my goodness, you have no idea how that warms my heart. You're not alone. And I think that that's an important message for people to hear. A number of years ago, I did a bar mitzvah for one of our families. And afterwards, a gentleman came up to me and he said, I'm not even paraphrasing, this is a quote. He said to me, "I've been going to these for 40 years, and this is the first one I ever understood." And on the one hand, it warmed my heart. And on the other hand, it broke my heart. Because to go through ritual, to go through attending things, to say words that you don't mean, or that you say them in a language that, well, it doesn't matter if I don't believe them. If I say it in Hebrew, it's okay. You know, that's not okay. Like there's integrity to what we believe and how we conduct ourselves, you know? And so hearing that from you, I feel like it's more than a job to me, but my job is done. If you understand my invoking that metaphor. So thank you for sharing your story. And I hope you never feel alone.
It's just unfortunate because at this age, I do not have the time left to learn all the things that I want to learn. And I do attend Torah study every Saturday at the Reform Temple. I'm very polite and I don't insult anybody with my beliefs. But there's still, except for this group, there's still nobody to talk to. But I have your book and it's very comforting and thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have any other questions or comments for Rabbi Jody? Rabbi Frank, you're muted. You're still muted. I don't know. I don't know if I can't do it, I don't think. Nope. Yeah,
In
I
the-
can't
In the
do it.
interim, I just want to say thank you, Rabbi Jody, for coming and speaking to us. This was a wonderful talk.
Thank you.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. And while we're waiting, Rich made a comment in the chat that says, after you use a liturgy that says what you believe, it's hard to go back to hypocrisy. I absolutely agree with that, Rich. I just so you know, Rabbi Jody, what you said about the gentleman who came up to you and said was the first bar mitzvah that he ever understood. My brother felt the same way at my son's bar mitzvah, because James had a secular humanistic bar mitzvah through city congregation, and my brother was literally told by the rabbi that he was learning from for his bar mitzvah. When he asked what his Torah portion was about, the rabbi said, "You don't need to know that, just memorize it." And my brother was so turned off by religion at that point that he went through the motions. To him, it was a party where he got a lot of money as presents, and that was all it meant to him. And he told me later that my son's bar mitzvah meant more to him than his did, which made me sad, but also made me feel like, okay, you know, he said to me, where was this when we were growing up?
Mhm.
And I didn't have a bar mitzvah because I didn't want to mumble stuff I didn't believe either. So I get it, you know. So I appreciate the book so much because it really makes you feel like what you're doing has not that I ever doubted it since I found humanistic Judaism, but what you're doing has integrity, you know, and I think sometimes we need to know that we have integrity and that we're not alone, you know.
I appreciate that. And I think you're right. Knowing that we're not alone, knowing that there is a movement that values integrity, integrity sometimes over continuity, you know, over hanging on to pieces of tradition. I generally think that ritual without meaning really amounts to empty ritual. And doing things because you quote have to, or because it's the way we've always done things, you know, I just sort of fundamentally disagree with that. I would prefer to find innovative ways to reinterpret, and if something cannot be reinterpreted by way of ritual, then the ritual probably ought not to be kept, you know? There are some things though that I think need to be unchanged, and Torah text is one of them.
Yeah.
You know, that's not ours to rewrite. We can reinterpret. We can, you know, the Devar was wonderful about manna and the metaphor. I mean, that was terrific. So we are free to derive our own meanings from it, but the text is the text. So in that sense, I think, you know, we don't rewrite it. We can write our own commentary. So yeah.
Frank, you unmuted yourself.
Great. See, old people can learn new things. I just wanted to mention when Rabbi Jody mentioned that guy that came over to her and after 25 years, I think this is something that our rabbis in our movement hear a lot. And I remember after one of our Rosh Hashanah services up in Westchester, this woman, she was the mother of a young couple who had joined our congregation. And she was from Iran, and she came over to me and she said, you know, Rabbi, I've been coming to these services all my life. She said, I never realized this is what they actually meant and how beautiful they were. And I said, do you realize we didn't even mention God? And she said, she thought about it and she said, it's all the same thing, isn't it? You know, so I said, you know, what do you say? I said, well, yeah, it is all the same thing. Whether you say the word or not, it's our belief and it's what it means. And so I think that, and also I have done many b'nai mitzvahs and mitzvot and whatever. And so always I get kids coming up to me afterwards and saying, I want my bar mitzvah to be like that. You know, and even the parents say, you teach them something about their heritage, about their background, about the scriptures that was, you know, they learn something, you know, they have something behind them. It's not just mumbling a language that they just are, they're so turned off by it. You know, Rabbi Jody, you know, when you do a wedding and you say, how many of you have, you know, been raised Jewish? Well, last time I was in shul was my bar mitzvah, and that was it. They left, right? So, yeah, so we have a lot to offer.
Yes, we do. And I think that people stick with it, you know, I mean, I hope so, that it doesn't become what Rabbi Friedman years ago called, and I'm sure he's not the only one, called pediatric Judaism. You know, that you pop in while your kids are being raised and then you pop back out. And then maybe down the road when your kid's getting married, you're like, oh, I need a rabbi. And then not again until somebody has died and you need somebody to officiate at a funeral. You know, and so people kind of, I call it like the hokey pokey. They're like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, you know, that they can't quite decide as to what they want to do. And I don't say this with disrespect. You know, I mean, it sounds like I'm being sarcastic, but I'm really not. What I'm trying to suggest is that there's a struggle that's involved. There's a struggle. It's not easy to say out loud, I don't believe in God. You know, I think we cite a survey that more people, I think it's in the introduction, that a Gallup poll found that more people would be willing to vote for a Muslim to be president of the United States than an atheist. That's a little bit revealing.
It's hard to believe. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway. Yes, Anna. Can I just call on her?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yes, of course you can. Go ahead, Anna. Sorry.
Oh my God, that's scary what you said about atheists and Muslims. My goodness. You mentioned the text and you know, not changing it or whatever. And so I just wanted to mention to me, the text, I mean, what do we have, about 25 or 26 books? You know, the prophets, the Ketubim, the Pentateuch. it is, it's especially in Hebrew, it is quite an impressive work of literature. I mean, who would want to change it? A lot of it is poetry. It's just amazing, both as narrative and the styles in which is written is, it's just fantastic literature. And I'm so very curious. I mean, I know that there are these, categories, and people, secular people have studied it, and J wrote this part and P wrote that. But I'm just so curious about who wrote this, especially like, Genesis and Exodus, and how did they invent these stories? And from where did it come? It's like even the first like verses of Genesis, it's heavy duty poetry the way it's written in Hebrew, and the first day and and it was over, bang. It is very, very, very good writing, and I'm very curious where it came from and why. Who would think of this stuff? And I'm thinking of both the styles in which it's written and the narratives, the stories.
Sure. So
You
there,
know,
there are a lot of theories.
I remember when I was in college, when it was some kind of, I don't know, art history class or something, I don't know what, and there was this famous German scholar that was teaching the class, and I don't know how the story of Joseph came up, Joseph and Potiphar, and so he was wondering, he didn't understand, why didn't Joseph just give in and sleep with the wife, why? But it's just, it's fascinating.
It is. I happen to love Bible studies. I can't say that all of my colleagues are as fond of the Bible as I am, but to me, it opens up the world of metaphor, as Rabbi Friedman said in his essay. The idea that there's a whole different vocabulary that could be used, and when we can approach it as literature and not as a theological dictate, I think that it expands our understanding. The other thing, my nickel speech on like studying Bible is the biblical writer and writers had an agenda, and that agenda was both theological and national, establishing the prominence of the biblical God Yahweh, and nationally creating this new nation called Israelites. So the stories are supportive of that narrative. The other thing is to understand that it was not written in the order that we have it. So there are stories, they were probably all written much later and then thrown back in time. And that the further back in time it looks, like if it's a story from the desert, then it was deemed to be more authoritative. And then really quickly, it was an oral tradition before it was ever written down. So people like shared stories, and that's why sometimes we have two versions of things. And also because there was the North and the South, Judah, and Israel in the North. And if you're trying to unify a nation, you don't want to get rid of anybody's stories. You kind of want to find a way to integrate all of them. So for me, finding all of that out in my studies was revelatory. It gave me access to a text that I didn't think I could access because I viewed it as a religious text. And then once I viewed it as literature, a world opened up.
Well, it's got all these nasty things that people did as well.
Yes.
That's one of the things that makes it interesting. I mean, it's not about saints.
Yes. Yes, for sure.
I mean, it starts out that way.
Mhm.
You know, with the first story, it starts out that way.
Yeah.
So,
Me? I would like to comment on, just to add a comment to this movement that has unbelievably enriched my life for the last, I guess, 25 years. Um, Religion played a lot in my father's life, but not religious religion. But I loved the fact that he loved it, and it like gave him a compass in life. But it didn't for me, and I'm old enough to have not been uh, to not have a very big part in the conservative movement at the time. There was no that bat mitzvahs had just started and whatever. Um, but my involvement in religion was taking my younger brother, back and forth to Hebrew school. And then I didn't think about it again until I was 25 and traveling around, and it was the high holidays, and I was in San Francisco and I hated it. And I thought maybe if I had an anchor. So I went to a Reform synagogue where I had never been before, and it was like horrible. It was like, rewriting in the language of Jonathan Livingston Seagull or something, for all us old people who remember it. And men didn't wear kippahs or taluses or what. Anyway, the point was that I didn't think about it again until my first daughter was born, and she just kept talking to me about, like, why can't I sit on Santa's lap? Why couldn't we have a tree? And I'm like, I can't. I just can't. And I thought that if I could let you know where we came from, that would open up the world a little bit for you in terms of a love of Judaism. And I don't know whether it did or not. We do light candles on Hanukkah no matter where we are. We Zoom that. And we do somehow or other, I go to high holidays and everything. But the point was that I was trying to make was that religion is such a personal thing. It's so personal that how could you dictate to anybody? And unless they need a follower. One of my cousins is a Lubavitch, and it's like the sound of one hand clapping. I'm like, there's nothing to connect on. And I love the fact that Judaism allows us to interpret, and that it's my own course I'm setting, and my own things that I choose to believe that gives me a moral compass. And my one last point for those who are in New York, I just today saw the Anne Frank exhibit at the Jewish Center on 16th Street. Not only is it fundamentally I don't think I'm going to be able to sleep tonight, but it is a really well put together exhibit. But there's just so much of the movement that parallels some of the things that are happening today, that it's even more scary. Anyway, that was what I wanted to say.
Yeah, when you talk about religion being so personal, as Rabbi Frank mentioned, because I mentioned to him before we got started on all of this, my mom died on January 7th. And one of the things that she and I had conversation about several years ago was whether or not she wanted the Kaddish said. And I said, I will honor your wishes, whatever you want. And she said, and I included this in my eulogy, she said, and I quote, I didn't believe in God when I'm alive. I'm not going to start when I'm dead. A little tradition wouldn't hurt. And so to that end, we included in the pamphlet, we included the traditional Kaddish, which my sister very much appreciated because she remains in the conservative movement. But we also then included the modern Kaddish, Glory of Life, by Rabbi Peter Schweitzer of blessed memory. And it wasn't just that she was like saying that so that my sister and I would feel equally represented. It was because she finally, I think, felt the freedom to express her own atheism, which she had described to me at two occasions where she was convinced there was not a God. She told me that when she was like a child, that another student had died, and she felt there couldn't be a God if that could happen. And she told me that the other time when she was fully convinced was when Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. So you know where her politics were. You know, that she was so distressed. I remember that morning she came downstairs in tears, and I said, "What happened?" And she said, "You know, what's the matter?" And she said, "They killed Bobby." And so that for her was the proof that she needed to be able to give an expression to it. But by the same token, she never really let us know that that's what she felt. So that idea that a little tradition wouldn't hurt, that's part of the personal part, you know, of religion, where you fall on that. So I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Sure. Like, I fast on Yom Kippur because it reminds me to think about, you know, the year and what I've done and all of that stuff. So I find it really helpful. But the people I break the fast with are like, they're not Reform. What's the other one?
Reconstructionist?
Yeah, Reconstructionist. But still, you know, it's all part of their ritualistic sort of blind belief. And I like the fact that I own my fasting. But anyway, that's what.
Thank you.
Sybil, did I see a hand, Sybil?
Yeah. Hi. Thank you very, very much, Rabbi Jody, for a wonderful talk. And just as an aside, I think that many people, the Holocaust, the fact of the Holocaust has turned many people away from belief in God. But my question was sort of two parts to it. Who are you principally marketing this book to? And are there other major religions that sort of have a branch, if I can call it that, similar to ours in that it is non-theistic, but you know, is aligned otherwise with you know the culture of the religion?
So I think second question first. I think that the closest that you would find are the Unitarians, Universalist Unitarians. Sometimes there have been humanistic Jews who maintain a membership in a humanistic congregation and in a UU church, and find that fluidity to work very well for them. As Unitarians, they don't believe in the Trinity. That's the Unitarian part. So I think that there is.
Don't they believe in God?
They sort of talk about like the source of life a little bit. They do mention God. I don't want to misrepresent, and I'm not as well studied in them, but I know that humanistic Jews feel very comfortable at a Unitarian church, and that I believe sometimes humanistic Jews have been described as Jewish Unitarians. Okay, so I would suggest go forth and learn on that one because I don't have a full answer on it. The other thing is, if you could just help me with the first part of your question.
I wanted to know who you were marketing principally.
Thank you. Yes, the marketing. So I think that we intend our audience, we wanted it to be very readable, you know, not strictly an academic work. But that said, we hope that university classes in in comparative religion, in comparative Judaism, in that people who teach modern Judaism, that the book would be appropriate there. The other thing is, as I think I mentioned, that for humanistic Jews to get a deeper and a broader base for their own knowledge, and then people who are interested in a cultural secular approach, people who teach secular studies or who take a secular approach, but maybe don't know the scaffolding, you know, that got them there. So it isn't something that I think you would, and maybe some of you have done this, but and I'm so pleased if you have, that you necessarily start at the beginning and you read all the way to the end. You know, that you may sort of pick it up and read a section or a few essays and then go back and read some other ones, you know. I mean, I know that Rabbi Shalom and I multiple times read it from start to finish in completing this process. But yeah. So I think that it has a very broad appeal. You know, people are interested in Jewish life, contemporary Jewish, the contemporary Jewish scene, to know where on the landscape this is. When I took my class in modern Judaism as part of my when I was getting my master's at Spertus, he didn't mention humanistic Judaism once. I wrote a 25-page paper as my paper for that class to kind of introduce him to what humanistic Judaism was. So I would hope that that kind of expansion on a syllabus, this book would fit right in.
Thank you.
Of course.
Anyone else with any questions or comments for Rabbi Jody? No?